Imagine if each morning when you wake up, you're smiling and looking forward to your day, knowing you are happy even while you're dealing with grief and loss. The Grief and Happiness podcast inspires, comforts, and supports you with each new episode. I'm Emily Zero-Threat, welcoming you to explore with me your life of endless possibilities. Aloha. I am so happy to have you all together with us today. We have a very interesting podcast today that I'm really looking forward to talking to our guest, Andrea Magder. And she has done something that I just think is so special and unique and needed and beautiful that you're really going to enjoy hearing about it. So, Andrea, could you kind of introduce yourself to us, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I worked in the arts for as long as I can remember. I worked in the film business. I ran a nonprofit. I'm a writer. I produced independent films. And in 2017, I lost my son suddenly at the age of 28. And my world pretty much stopped. And I think I spent about a year just sitting on a chair, like unable to focus. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to honor him in some way. I just felt a need to do that. And he had started writing a book about a month before he passed away about his life. He didn't get very far. But after he passed, I found the beginning of his novel and some artwork that he created and journals and I was thinking, like, what am I going to do with all this? Like, how can I honor him with this? And I was going to a couple of support groups at that time for grief. And at one of the support groups, man started speaking, and he had just lost his son as well. And he said that his son had left had written 18 symphonies. He says, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And after that, that kind of got me thinking that he and I aren't the only ones. There's a lot of people out there, not just that lost children, but, like other people who had lost members of their family that had, some creative talent, whether they were a writer, a visual artist, a musician. And as I started talking to people, I realized that there was a need to get this out, to showcase this work, because, what happens to it otherwise? It either gets tossed out, which happens many times, or it gets boxed up, put in a closet somewhere, and then eventually forgotten. And to me, that's sad, especially there's so many artists that were just emerging, that were just beginning to get their work out, and their careers just came to, an end. So, and it's also, aside from showcasing their work and honoring them, it helps the families, in terms of grief. It makes them feel that, their loved one's work wasn't for nothing. So I decided to create The Artist Lives, to showcase the work of unrecognized, deceased visual artists, musicians, and writers. So that's, where I'm at. So we're just, open, trying to get submissions and marketing. And we have an Instagram and a Facebook. Our Instagram and our Facebook account, aside from recognizing unknown artists, we also profile well-known artists. But the website is strictly for artists that never got any attention, during their lifetime.
I just think that's so fabulous. I've done a lot of creative things in my life. I love art from when I was a little kid. And I've done ceramic sculpture and weaving and drawing and painting. And I love doing those sorts of things. And I know most of my stuff nobody's ever seen. A lot of, I've shown things and sold things and been in shows and galleries and stuff. But most of it, if somebody ran across it now, they wouldn't know what it was or what it meant or when it was done, or even if I did it, because I didn't necessarily sign things when I was just doing it more casually. So I just think it's wonderful to have a place. I know there are lots of people out there that are quiet creatives or silent creatives that are doing it for themselves or for their love of their music or their art or whatever it is. And what a wonderful thing to get to share it at this point.
I also have gotten a lot of messages from living artists or art, that are concerned. What do they do with their art, their work once they pass? A lot of them have no heirs, nobody to leave it to. And, and also people that are terminally ill, I've heard from. So, it's, people don't think, that, if you don't have anybody, a relative or somebody, what happens to your work?
Yeah, you're really onto something. I think I can see this just growing and being bigger and more wonderful all the time. That we have access to. We will or do by what you do have access to things that in the past never would have seen the light. So I think that's great. Can you give us
there's so much talent out there too.
Yeah.
It's some of the artwork and the music. It's just like it's incredible. It's incredible. So.
Can you give us an example or two of special things you've discovered while you're doing this work?
Well, I discovered a wonderful singer-songwriter Julius Trombino, and he was young. He passed away, I think, at the age of 22 or 23. Somewhere around there. And he was just about to break out. He opened for the Jonas Brothers.
Wow.
Not too long before he passed away. And his music is amazing. It's a song sound like a score for a Broadway show. So, but a lot of times I feel like people, are hesitant to submit because they feel maybe the work isn't good enough. And because when I first started this, people would ask me, are you taking any work? Is it going to be curated? Like how? And I felt that I couldn't turn anybody down. I just needed to, because it's more than just the art, the music or the literary. It's the person and their loved ones that are left behind. So, and art is subjective anyway. So it's not, at least at this point, nothing is being curated. We're just we're open to anybody sending any work in as long as the artist is deceased.
Yeah. I just think that's fabulous. I was, as far as like quality of art, what I was thinking of when you were saying that was I had one time when I was in New York, actually, I got to see a show that was of Matisse and Picasso, who were contemporaries, and they were doing similar kinds of art through the different ages of their lives. And it was just fascinating looking at when you think of Picasso, you think of something in particular, or Matisse, you think of something in particular, but they did so many different kinds of art, different art forms and ways, and very similar. And I can see people looking at some of those works, which to me, you might kind of think of practice or just, just working at it or learning or developing as you were going along. And they go, boy, that's junk. Who did that? Or who cares? And it's Matisse or Picasso. But those were a lot of the works that were in their shows to show that all the different forms and kind, that you don't have to be one particular thing. And some of the stuff that they did was absolutely exquisite. And I didn't know that either one of them did that kind of art.
And also Picasso wasn't really a household name.
That's right.
During his lifetime. If it wasn't for his brother, who ran around and tried to showcase his work, we might not know the name Picasso today.
That's right. So
there's always the chance of these artists being discovered posthumously.
Yeah, and you're like Picasso's brothers. You can give a space to be seen and be heard and to be read that nobody else has been thinking about, and we can find miracles in there, just fabulous stuff.
No, I hear stories that artwork found in trash bin, and and then there's an artist, I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong, Arthur Pinijan, Pinijian. I'm probably have this pronunciation wrong, but he was a artist and before he passed away, he instructed his family to toss all his artwork, in the trash. And they never did, and it stayed in his house. And the house was sold, and the new owner found, I think it was maybe it was thousands of pieces of artwork, and it ended up initially being sold for over 30 million.
Wow.
Yeah, and then later on, I heard numbers greater than that. So you never know.
That's right. And sometimes it might, when whatever the form, whatever kind of art it was created, it might not have been the time that everybody else was doing that. And when somebody finds it later, they go, oh my gosh, he was so ahead of his time, or she was so ahead of her time that somebody already was doing this, and it was pretty spectacular then, but people didn't know.
No, it's true. That's true.
So, boy, you're just exposing things and having what a wonderful exploration. I could just see a lifetime of going through that and finding these great things.
Yeah, no, it makes me feel good too with the the families, aside from the talent, just that, it almost feels like their loved one is still there, because their work is getting out there. It's not buried somewhere that nobody can see it. So
that's right.
That's really important. Yeah.
Now, if one of our listeners has some precious treasure like that they would like to share with the Artist Lives, what would they do?
They would go to our website, which is theartistlives.org, and there's a submission form on the site, and they can fill that out and send in the attachments, and they can always email me as well. My email's on the site, so if anybody has any questions.
And we'll have in the show notes at the bottom of this podcast the ways to get to theartistlives.org and to Andrea too. So you can contact them, and I encourage you to. Sometimes we hesitate about things like that. I know early on when I was doing different things that I didn't want to enter it in shows or anything. I was just doing it because it was entertaining to me. But when people would see it, they'd say, you gotta share this. People want to see this or need to see this. And if you look at it that way, that you're opening a side of your loved one that people didn't get to see, and now they can.
Right. That's right. That's right. There's been also so many people that lost children from overdose, especially these days with fentanyl. And,
oh, yeah.
There's a stigma attached that people see them as an addict.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's also the site, they're artists. So it's nice that they're associated with their art and not just, their addiction.
That's such an important part. I can't talk today. Such an important point, because you're right. So many times we remember somebody by their last moment and forget about everything that led up to that. And it could be that they had quite an amazing time going up to that. I can remember someone, he actually sang at my wedding. He was probably 12 years old when he did that, because I was always involved in theater, and I was an adult at the time, but I was performing as the singing and dancing witch in Hansel and Gretel, and he was Hansel. And he was very, very talented. And I had somebody scheduled to sing in my wedding all the way to right like the week of the wedding, and somebody in his family died, and he had to leave and go to that funeral instead of coming to my wedding. And I needed to find somebody, and I thought, I know this kid's only 12, but his voice is phenomenal. And it was so beautiful. And he went to college, became a composer, was a singer and composer, phenomenally talented. And he died of AIDS. And people remembered him because he died of AIDS instead of this incredible talent that he had. The music, fortunately, he'd been writing music, so it wasn't just his voice, because there weren't a lot of recordings of his voice, but the music, and he was writing things like symphonies. I think when the stigma of AIDS started not being so strong, things like that started emerging, and so he's more known now than we thought was going to happen at the time.
That's good. That's good.
But there's just there's so much beauty and joy and great things written. It doesn't necessarily have to be happy. Can be great novels and things that people have written that don't get shared, right? Because they weren't out yet, and people just didn't know.
Right. Yeah, no, there was somebody sent me her mom's poetry, that was just sitting there. And she probably thought who would ever see her mom's poetry.
Yeah. Her mom might have thought that too.
I'm sure she did. Yeah, absolutely. So.
But how nice to have it out there, and you can when you've got it there on the artist list, then you can tell your family this is Grandma wrote this. Look at it's online and look it up, and that's really cool.
Another thing we're looking to get to do is to get QR code plaques.
Oh, cool.
So it will go on either a headstone or memorial bench.
Wow.
And they scan and it goes directly to the artist's page.
I just got chills. Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
We're living in the digital world.
Yeah. Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
Gee, things we never would have
especially
thought of before.
Like with memorial benches, you pass them and you think, who are these people? Or even walking through a cemetery. So
yeah. Gee, what a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
How creative you are. That
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, It's so wonderful when you can take something that's been such a hard part of your life or a challenge in your life and find something beautiful in it.
Yeah.
And it's sweet memories instead of
Yeah.
just the negative, to be able to find the positive.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it's hard. Grief is really tough, and I think if you can honor your loved one in some way, it helps, because that you're keeping that connection, you're keeping them alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd say, oh, yeah, I'm having all these little memory flashbacks by talking to you. My husband, Jacques, he was a lot older than I was, and he was a wonderful singer. And he lived in Los Angeles in the days of live radio shows.
Oh, okay.
And so he used to
He
have
was a lot older.
a lot older, yeah. And he had a show. It was just him and a pianist, and he'd sing, and the pianist played. And his voice was kind of Frank Sinatra-ish,
Right.
and he sang those kinds of songs. And I actually found that I didn't realize that we had them. These recordings, like vinyl recordings, when they didn't, it wasn't like records that they sold at the store, but they did the recordings from the radio show on these records. And after he died, and then we had this incredible celebration for him, I had somebody that I knew who could take that, and he didn't restore it, but he was able to get it onto something, a current form, like an MP3 or something, where you could hear it really well. And we had it at the service. When people were coming in to sit down, he was singing to them.
Ah, that's very interesting.
It was pretty amazing. People were, of course, most people didn't realize it when it started out, and when they were told, they were just kind of shocked, because
Right. They thought maybe he staged the whole thing.
Yeah. It was pretty spectacular to have it, something from that long ago, when
exactly.
He still was singing. He was doing, even though he was a philosophy professor, he did a lot of musical theater with singing and acting and dancing and stuff, because he just loved to do that. So people knew he sang, but it was a different kind of music that was on those old recordings. And it was really special to be able to have that and to hear him.
Sure. Yeah, one of the things I found, as I speak to people, is especially anybody who's lost a child, the toughest thing for them is going through their loved one's work. They want to submit it, but it's just so painful to go through and gather everything together, and it's hard, just difficult. So I always say, just wait. You don't have to send it now. When you're ready, you'll submit it.
Yeah, just do it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, no, I had the same thing when I first started this, and I was going through, my son he wrote, I have journals and short stories and essays, and just going through and trying to decide what to, put up on his page. And it's painful. It's really painful, but once it's up there, it makes you feel good.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's beautiful like that. I found some old love letters that my grandmother had written to her husband, who died early in their marriage. And I didn't really know about that relationship or anything, but it just was so beautiful. It's like I could hear her voice saying these beautiful words. Mm. They were just, it was so sweet. And with something somebody else has written that you're memorializing like that, I can see the comfort of being able to, nobody else is going to hear that voice like you hear it, but that voice, exactly. You know what that sounded like. And it makes it really special.
Yeah, it does.
Well, what wonderful work you're doing. I'm so thrilled that you're doing it. And I'm tickled to get to have you on the podcast so that we can have other people realize that it's out there and realize that it's a possibility for them too to contribute to this so that they can have their loved ones remembered in a different way than they may have thought of before. And I think it's just quite beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
So I appreciate you being on the show today. This has just been really delightful to get to talk to you. And as I said earlier, we'll have all those links so that you can get in contact with Andrea or with the Artist Lives to be able to go and look and see and explore and spend some time there yourself and see the wonders that are there. They're quite wonderful. You can subscribe to it too if you'd like to. So thank you very much. And
thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm just thrilled to have had you. And we'll see my audience again next time. We always have something interesting in store for you to listen to and think about. So thank you so much for being here with us. And we'll see you soon. Aloha.
Aloha.
Do you want more comfort, support, and happiness? Join the Grief and Happiness Alliance. Visit my website at lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com and read my book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, rate it, review it, and binge on all our episodes on grief and happiness. I can't wait to welcome you back to another episode